Hi everyone, I'm Dr. John Douillard, and today I want to talk about calorie restriction, particularly important in the springtime, what Ayurveda calls the kapha season, the time of the year where the earth is holding on to more water. We hold on to more water during this particular time of the year. Think of kapha like the word cough or congestion, and that kapha is seated in your respiratory tract. And the immunity that we have in our respiratory tract is 100% dependent on the immunity we have in our gut, which is 70% of our immune system, called gut immunity, which is the seat of vata. So in the springtime, we're more vulnerable to those respiratory congestive type issues. But don't forget, upstream from your respiratory tract immunity is your gut immunity. So we always have to keep an eye on the strength and the integrity of our digestive system, because your ability to digest well is directly linked to your ability to detoxify well. So if you don't digest well, and you just take the food out of your diet, like that's why I wrote Eat Wheat, take the food out of your diet, never really fix the problem. You end up with a situation where you become more vulnerable to immune compromise related concerns. Remember, your intestinal skin is a target for viruses. Your respiratory skin is a target for viruses. Ayurveda talked about how to support immunity many, many years ago, thousands of years ago. And they said the key was to support the environment and support the host, the one who's being infected. And that means, strengthening your gut and therefore your respiratory immunity, which is the lining of your intestinal tract. So every spring, what happens is we have sort of a changing of the guard. In nature, there's an absolute massive microbial surge that takes place in the springtime. The bugs just swarm around the roots, and you pull out the roots, you eat the roots, you get this inoculation of brand new spring bugs to help decongest you in the spring. In the summer, all the greens and everything that's harvested give you another stable of brand new bugs that inoculate your gut with bugs that will help cool you down and dissipate heat in the summer, and another set of bugs in the fall for boosting immunity in the winter. Stanford research shows that this is what's supposed to happen. Our gut bugs are supposed to change from one season to the next, and it's very, very important. And our diet has to change, because that's the only way our gut bugs will actually shift. And of course, that takes place only when you're eating whole foods, not sprayed foods. Obviously, that's really, really important. I wrote an article not long ago about a study where they took deer, and deer ate certain foods like bark in the winter, and they had certain microbes in their digestive system to be able to break down the bark in the winter. And they have different microbes in the summer for digesting things like leaves and things like that in the summertime. And then they gave the bugs the deer the bark in the summer, where they had bugs for digesting only leaves, and it caused such a level of indigestion it could kill the deer. And it was such a powerful study for me, because it was like, wow, deer die when they eat out of season. What happens to us? So we have to realize that our circadian, Nobel Prize winning circadian clock, which Ayurveda talked about for thousands of years to live in sync with the natural cycles, first and foremost starts with the seasonal cycles. And these cycles tell us that in the springtime, we should eat less food. If you were walking, in hunting and gathering in the springtime thousands of years ago, you would have no grains, you would have no carbohydrates, you would bake no bread. There would be nothing really for you to eat except for pulling roots and some spring greens and maybe some berries and a few things, and you would probably have to hunt a little bit more to help support yourself during that particular time, right? Now in the fall, there's a massive harvest of everything, and you're eating carbs and grains and nuts and seeds and lots of fats and a huge, overwhelming amount of calories at that particular point of time that supports a different stable of bugs. But in the spring, it's a time of calorie restriction. All the religious holidays for fasting take place in the spring, because historically there wasn't a lot of food in the spring. So if you take the carbohydrates out of your diet, you end up in what we call in Ayurvedic medicine a naturally occurring kapha-reducing, calorie-restricted diet. And that's what happens. So thinking about, go to our grocery list. We published a recipe and a grocery list and a superfood list for every month of the year called the 3-Season Diet Challenge, where we challenge you in a nice way to eat according to the seasons and get the benefit of that changing of the microbial guard, which supports your gut and respiratory immunity throughout the different changes of the seasons. And we always know that change of the seasons, traveling one place or another place, going to a vacation and coming back, that's when our immune system gets compromised. When we sort of mimic a seasonal change with travel, or we go through a seasonal change, that's when our immune system gets compromised. And we need to stay ahead of that curve by eating the right foods in the right season. So some basic things to think about. Calorie restriction. No carbs. Really reduce the bread. Of course, everything has to be whole foods, no processed foods whatsoever. So reduce the carbohydrates, reduce the breads. You can eat more tubers, things from the ground, that's fine. Beans are great this time of year. Fruits are minimal except for berries and citrus fruits, and some tart apples are okay as well. For the most part, a little bit of good quality, healthy oils. But the overwhelming idea is that we start reducing the calories. Now, in the year 2000, my book, The 3-Season Diet, came out. I wrote an ebook called the Weight Balancing ebook. It was based on a study we did where we had people eat 3 meals a day, no snacks, and then they started kind of slowly making their supper a little bit lighter, soup or a salad, then made their supper a little bit earlier, and then eventually were able to actually have just 2 meals a day and have no supper. And this was back in the days when everybody was eating 6, 7, 8 meals a day, and the grazing thing was really the thing, and it was completely debunked by all the science now that we should actually have meals, and the less we eat, the better. In India, Ayurveda, they say that 1 meal a day is for a yogi, 2 meals a day is for a yogi, or a bogi rather. A bogi is a working class person who needs extra food to do their physical labor, and 3 meals a day is for a rogi, which is a sick person, mostly dead, already in a hospital. They don't even have a name for 4, 5, and 6 meal a day people because you're mostly dead at 3, right? So the idea in this weight balancing plan, which is really the Ayurvedic calorie restriction, intermittent fasting, time restricted eating plan that's been around for thousands and thousands of years. And there's some interesting tweaks on it that are now backed by science, which is not that's not what we're being told when you listen to the podcasts and the videos about intermittent fasting. Everybody says, oh, if you're going to do intermittent fasting, just skip breakfast. It works for our culture because you can come home and have dinner, and it definitely works in a lot of ways. But the circadian medicine, Nobel Prize winning science, tells us that breakfast is a critically important meal for blood sugar and stamina and energy and metabolism in your body. So Ayurveda was always saying, have your breakfast, have your main meal at lunch, and a supper was supplemental or soup-like or small. So I encourage you to download my free ebook. It's called the Weight Balancing ebook, and it takes you steps to show that the autophagy actually worked really well. But my point here in this video is that this happens every spring. So just think about, read the article associated with this video where I give you the information and the basic dietary principles. Download our free 3-Season Diet Challenge where you get those recipes for throughout the year, every month for free. So you start to tap into the benefits of living in sync with the natural cycles. And like I said, your immunity, your health, everything starts in your digestive system. Gut immunity is now directly linked to lung immunity. They used to think your lungs were sterile, but now they know. Science has shown clearly that we have a microbiome in our lungs which supports respiratory immunity. 100% dependent on gut immunity. We can't escape the value of really important